My name is Ty. I walked into the house, and just as I was about to close the door, he shouted in a loud voice, "Did you bring the money?" I got scared and replied, "I only brought this much." He searched me thoroughly, and we realized that I had nothing but that amount. He took the money, looked at it with disdain, and told me, "Take this money and get out. Or you know what? I'll take it, and you'll still have to leave." I said, "Just wait and let's talk." He retorted, "I've told you 1,000,000 times that begging is an art that needs you to be cunning, like shedding some tears and putting on torn clothes." He continued, "Take Took with you because people are sympathetic towards children." Before he could say anything else, I yelled at him, "I've told you many times before, you have nothing to do with Took." Hearing that, he said sarcastically, "Okay, now get out, my love." I replied, "But I'm hungry. I want to eat." He responded, "When you make more money, I'll feed you and your sister." "By the way," he continued, "we've run out of insulin injection for your sister, and I am not paying a penny to buy her another one." Then he kicked me out of the house and slammed the door shut. That was the situation with Charlie, my stepfather. One day, we woke up to find out that my mother had taken her life by overdosing on stimulants. Since that day, my sister and I have been Charlie's slaves. I returned to my friends, who as usual were up all night in the neighborhood. As soon as they saw me, one of them said, "What's the matter, my friend? Did you get kicked out again? What's going on?" Another friend said to him, "What's new?" Then he said to me, "Hey, come over here. Just so you know, you've got no one but us." I joined them, but I was so repulsed by what had happened. Rock looked at me and said, "You seem hungry. Eat this." He gave me a slice of pizza. I felt embarrassed, so I took it after thanking him. A few minutes later, I told them that I had to go and that I'd be back soon. I went back home and called out to Took from the window in a hushed voice, "Took, Took!" She appeared at the window, and as soon as she saw me, she was elated and asked, "Ty, where have you been?" I told her, "Take this slice and eat it quickly and make sure Charlie doesn't see you." She happily took it from me and asked, "Are you not coming today?" I replied, "Yes, I'll come over later, but go sleep and don't wait up for me." She reminded me, "Ty, we're out of insulin." I smiled to reassure her and said, "I know, don't worry. I'll bring it for you today, God willing." Feeling bitter and upset, I left home unsure how I was going to get the insulin for her. I soon returned to my friends, who were engrossed in discussing the legend of Ecula. They didn't even notice when I got there. Frustrated, I interrupted them and said, "Hey guys, enough is enough. Aren't you bored of this story? I have memorized every detail by now. The mother of the tailless dog had bitten Michael's great-grandfather, giving him the strongest jaw in the world that destroyed everything." Michael replied, "Yes, that really happened to my great-grandfather." I said, "If that were true, he would have been a millionaire, not a beggar." I could tell I upset him with that comment, so I tried fixing the situation and explained, "I mean, a beggar like me, because we're all beggars after all." He retorted, "If you're so bold and don't care about anything, then why were you scared to go with us to the mountain?" "Scared?" I asked, baffled. "I got scared?" All of my friends replied in unison, "Yes, you were afraid." I responded, "No way, that's impossible. I don't fear things like that, but I'm just not into that stuff and don't believe in it." Rock said, "All right, we'll make a challenge. We'll head up to the mountain, and if you're really not scared, enter the cave alone." "If you all couldn't climb the mountain together, how on earth am I supposed to go there alone and enter the cave?" I asked. He said, "That's the challenge. Take it or leave it. If you can do it, you'll get $10. After that, all my friends chipped in $2 each and put the money in front of me until they collected $10. Then they said, "If you can go in the cave, the money is yours." Even though I was terrified to go to a place like that, I had no choice. I needed every penny to collect money for my sister's insulin injection as soon as possible. Otherwise, Took's condition would deteriorate. So without thinking, I agreed to take on the challenge. We went to the location, and once we arrived, we heard the dogs barking, which scared all of us, not just me. They said to me, "Now climb the mountain and enter the cave in front of us." I left them and started climbing the mountain with my heart beating too fast, but I began to breathe deeply to calm myself down until I reached the cave. I turned on a small flashlight that Rock had given me before and directed it to the side of the cave before entering to make sure it was safe. When I saw that it was empty, I went in. Soon after that, they heard me screaming loudly and asking for help. "Help me! Help me!" They were about to go crazy, not knowing whether to rescue me or run away. They kept calling for me, asking, "Ty, what's going on in there?" Suddenly, my screaming turned into hysterical laughter. Then I heard Rock use all sorts of profanities. I teased them, "Shame on you all." Anyway, I made it down to them and took the money. Then we all headed back to the neighborhood. I bought the injection and returned home. I quietly opened the door to avoid letting my stepfather know that I was back. I dashed to Took's room and slept beside her. The next morning, when Took saw me sleeping next to her, she hugged me, saying, "I thought you wouldn't come." I replied, "What are you talking about? I promised." Suddenly, I heard my stepfather getting up, so I whispered to her, "Tuck, your injection is under the stairs. Please remember to take it." After that, I left her and quickly jumped out of the window. The 5 of us, my friends and I, started working as usual, holding banners and walking with them on the roads. Suddenly, I saw a person leaving a restaurant, seemingly a worker. He was leaning forward, struggling to empty something on the ground. Anyway, I noticed that he had dropped his wallet. I waited for a while and saw that he didn't notice. Quickly, I crossed the street and grabbed the wallet. Then I stood aside and opened it to find a significant amount of money, nearly $200. I didn't want to steal, but I desperately needed the money, so I couldn't resist. I took the money, threw the wallet and all its contents on the ground near the restaurant, and ran away. I didn't know where to hide the money, because if I went home, Charlie would definitely search me and take it from me. After thorough contemplation, I decided to go to the cave because it was safe, especially since nobody dared to go inside. At that moment, I sprinted towards the mountain and began climbing until I reached the cave. It was still morning, and since I had climbed it the day before, I wasn't as scared and made sure it was empty before entering. I entered the cave and began digging in the ground to hide the money. All of a sudden, I felt somehow it had gotten dark behind me. I turned around to see a large, strange creature blocking the sunlight from the entrance of the cave. I couldn't tell whether it was a dog or a wolf. It had big hazel eyes, very dense fur, and huge fangs. My heart raced when I saw it, and I froze. The creature paced back and forth, staring at me. I noticed that its tail had been cut, which made me think of the myth of Ecula. I quietly searched for anything that I could use to defend myself with in case it attacked me. However, before I could do anything, the creature pounced at me. When I opened my eyes, it was dark, and I realized I had fallen asleep in the cave. My clothes were torn, and I felt immense pain in my leg, which had a deep gash because of the bite. That made me remember what had happened. I looked beside me and saw the creature asleep. I tried to move slowly so that it would not feel my movement, but upon closer inspection, I realized that it was not moving because it was dead. I looked carefully to ensure that it was really dead. I was in great pain and failed even to stand up, so I gave up trying and spent that night in the cave until the next day. The next morning, I woke up to a rotten smell. I looked around to see the belly of the creature swollen and flies gathering on it. I looked at the bite wound on my leg to find that it had turned into stone like a scab. But oddly enough, I felt no pain in my leg or body. In fact, I felt stronger and more alert than ever before. I easily climbed down the mountain and ran home with a newfound energy, only to find nobody was home. I was worried that something might have happened to Took. I went out searching for them, asking the neighbors and kids in the street until I saw Charlie coming back with Took, who was dressed up as a beggar. As soon as Charlie saw me, he said mockingly, "Look who finally decided to show up. Here comes the master." "Did you take Took with you to beg?" I asked him. He replied, "Huh? If I didn't do that, then how would I feed her? You didn't show up yesterday and didn't bring money. I don't do charity." As he spoke, I felt a strange desire to bite him that was beyond my control. At that moment, I lost control, and in the spur of the moment, I attacked Charlie, biting his shoulder ruthlessly as he screamed in pain. His screaming made people look at us to see what was going on. I raised my head with my mouth full of blood. Upon seeing me in that state, Took screamed, and the onlookers were terrified. I then pulled Took to bite her as well. The desire to bite her was rebellion against myself. Took kept crying and screaming. I somehow managed to let her go, and I bit myself to calm myself instead. After I finally calmed down, I realized what was happening around me. I saw Charlie unconscious, and the people gathered looked shocked by what I had done. I looked at Took, who was screaming in horror. I approached her and mumbled, Took, I'm... She cried and ran away from me. That broke my heart, and I left. I went back to the cave and stayed there until my friends arrived at the mountain in the evening and began calling out for me. "Ty, are you here? Are you here?" I heard Michael saying to them, "I told you he wouldn't be here." Rock responded, "Then where on earth is he? We searched for him everywhere." I came out and asked them, "Why did you come here?" They were shocked when they saw me and asked, "What are you doing here? And what happened with Charlie and Took? We don't understand anything." I warned them to leave the place and never return because I could unintentionally harm them at any moment. They looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. So I grabbed the body of Ecula and threw it from the top of the mountain towards them. When it hit the ground, they saw it and started crying out. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you, my friend," I said to Michael. "The myth is real and your great-grandfather's story is true." They were all shocked. Nobody could say anything. I threw them the money and told them to take it back to its owner after I gave them the address of the restaurant. "Tell that person that the thief apologizes and says that he got punished," I said to them. "Listen," I continued, "please take care of Took. Never leave her alone and don't forget her injection. And deliver a message to Charlie that if I ever come to know that he took for begging again, I'll show him no mercy. I kept silent for a while, and then mustering up the courage to say it out loud, I told them, tell Took to forgive me, and that Ty loves her the most in the world. Now leave and never come back here. However, they kept crying and said, we won't leave you alone, friend. At that moment, I had to scare them, so I jumped from the mountain in a split second and attacked them, which scared them out of their wits, and they ran away. A week passed without knowing anything about the outside world, and no one came back for me.